Here we are, gentlemen. It's the end of another NFL season. It's officially in the books. We have a Super Bowl champion. It's the Chiefs coming out on top once again. And now it is time to just sit back and just look back on this NFL season. What it was, what we thought it was, and what we thought it was definitely far different from what it actually ended up being. And maybe a little bit of what we expect the NFL will become.
Yeah, so we call this the post-mortem show. Basically, the NFL season is over. Now I think it's officially 200 days before we see the NFL season again. I could be wrong about that, but we have other sports to look forward to. But before we do that, if you've been following us for about, what would you say, Tom, about half the season, we've been doing this
since
now.
The second half of the season.
So we are presented by Wolf Spreads. We have enjoyed working with them. We are expanded across the whole network, working on some other fun things to pick the spreads with. We did the NFL. The NBA is officially now open on the Wolf Spreads app. Excuse me. So if you're looking to get involved with that action while rooting for your favorite team, have you ever had a friendly debate, which we seem to do a lot on this show? Can you pick more games correctly? Does all this talk about parlays, lines, over and unders make your head spin, and you want to learn more about the sports betting hoopla? Gamble with us and come check out Wolf Spreads. We're running a sports betting competition completely free on the Wolf Spreads app. Here's how it works. Everybody gets $2,000 fantasy dollars. That's fake money to bet on NFL games. Especially, it's a good thing it was fake money from me because I had quite a terrible NFL playoffs. Whoever can profit the most with their 2K bankroll wins. And if you're not an NFL fan, don't worry. Wolf Spreads has competitions available for the NBA, MLB, NHL, college football, and college basketball. Put fantasy dollars on the over-under, the money line, or the spreads, competing for bragging rights with your fellow players while having additional fun watching sports and not risk losing your house in the process. Wolf Spreads, sports betting for friends who love the action.
Indeed. And we have loved the action with the NFL. We'll recap a little bit about, how we did looking back on the NFL season at some point during the show. We'll look at all the award winners and such, but guys, it's been a little over a week now since the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. We were supposed to do this spoiler earlier during the week, I should say a few days ago, but considering that my house lost every single ounce of power for a good 24 hours, we had to postpone it till now. But
with that beard, you're being like really Amish. You lost all that
I have it's been joked to me that one day, maybe for Halloween, I should just, look like an Amish.
What is it like to harvest your own grain?
Wait a minute.
Churn my own butter.
For NFL reference, you got the Ryan Fitzpatrick look going.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Ryan Fitzpatrick look.
How many teams was he on? Like all 30?
Everything. Everyone.
There's a
Every team in the AFC East
NFL team. There's a pretty good chance Ryan Fitzpatrick played for it.
Yeah.
By the way, DraftKings commercial, worst commercial ever. Him and Kevin Hart. It's too much magic. It's too much magic.
All right.
Well, as we try to lighten the mood a little bit.
Well, I was going to say, it's weird that we're starting with a little light mood because, unfortunately, I want to talk about the game, but it would be remiss if we did not talk about, in the aftermath of the game, Kansas City Chiefs having their Super Bowl victory parade in Kansas City when, unfortunately, a few people decided to fire off guns, and unfortunately, one person has been left dead. 22 plus have been left wounded. I want to say about half, if not more than half of those wounded ended up being children. 3 people, since Nick and I have talked about it on ETB Sports, 3 people have been apprehended, 2 of which were minors. 1 person has been left dead. I believe it was a worker at a local radio station.
Yeah, her name was Lisa Lopez Galvan. So, excuse me. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that name, but she was a local music radio DJ in the Kansas City area.
Yeah, and guys, I don't know what more I can really add on. I didn't know exactly. I was kind of left speechless on ETV Sports, just trying to talk about it, which Nick and I somehow did for 25 minutes. But
More like 30, but yeah.
or it was more like 30. But I don't know how much more I can add to it about just the shock and the depressing feelings. And in a way, I know this is kind of all sports, but the numbness in that it feels like so often now we hear about these shootings at major events, and now one's invaded a championship parade territory.
It makes you question these parades every year when a team wins a championship and you're trying to decide, okay, do I hold the event? You have to hold the event because when the team wins, the fans want to celebrate and hold the event. But there is no amount of security that could stop an asshole from getting in with a weapon and attacking. I'm sorry, I'm just being blunt, but that's just what it's not like in Times Square, where most of us are in New York, and you have 10 metal detectors that you have to walk through just to get into Times Square to watch the ball drop for New Year's. Now, we don't know what the security protocols were. Were there any security protocols? Did they do pat downs? It's kind of hard to do pat downs with, I don't know, if you had to take a guess, how many people you think were at this event?
A lot.
Like enough where you couldn't keep track, pretty much. Now, there was some reports that there is some gang violence reportedly involved in this story. So I don't know. We don't know exactly if there was a motive involved or you're in a situation where someone says, "Oh, look, a big event. Let me go destroy everybody's lives." Unfortunately. But one person died, like we said. Unfortunately, she was a radio DJ, which I can relate more to in that regard. Like Tom and I said on Empty the Bench, at least half of them were juvenile kids. And tough incident, tough day.
It's a sad day, honestly, and it's kind of, to take your words, Nick. It's like, unfortunately, we will talk about the Super Bowl, the game itself, because obviously that's what we do on the show. And especially when we have weekly shows like ours, we got to talk about all the headlines that happened within the last week. But in this case, we kind of, this is the story now. This has taken over the game itself. That this is what the talking points are, unfortunately, because this is just, it's really sad, honestly. And, whoever is responsible for this, we talk about, gang violence now supposedly being a motive, but, you know what? If you're willing to do something like this, I don't care what you have against another side. If you're willing to do something like this and put children supposedly as young as 6, according to sources, in a hospital, I'm sorry, but you're a sick bastard.
Yeah. I mean, guys, Nick, I'll ask you first, and then we'll ask Ben. Since you guys are first reacting to this, what do you think about this whole thing? Shock, horror?
Well, yeah, all of those things. I was also thinking of, like, at first I thought it seemed like, when I first heard this story, I thought it was like a typical mass shooting that you would think of, where there's some deranged young kid that just brings a rifle to an event and starts shooting a bunch of people. It seems like it's not that. It seems like it likely is gang violence, and gang members may have been shooting at each other or something like that. That's what it seems. I mean, I don't know that, but that's what it seems like, based on what I know. And usually with gangs, gang shootouts tend to not have very good aim. Like, they tend to not hit they usually aim at each other, but they hit a bunch of other people in the process.
And they don't care.
Yeah, they don't care, but also they're just like, usually the way gang shootouts work is that they're like trying to kill each other, and then they kill a bunch of other people in the process. That's usually what happens. Although I haven't heard that it was like people shooting at each other. I'm not exactly sure.
There are some parts of the story that are not accurate, or at least known.
Right.
As yet.
Right. We don't know, because usually gangs don't go to like events and just start shooting indiscriminately. From what
Right.
I mean, like I've never heard
Mhm.
of gangs doing that. They usually try to kill each other, if anything.
Right. And
Like,
and
and so it,
but when a news story like this happens, obviously it takes some time for it to truly develop and for us to truly know all the facts. As
but
to what
apparently the
happened.
shooters were under 18.
Yeah, at least two of them.
Supposedly.
At least two of them.
Supposedly, they were under 18. I mean, and I saw them. If they were over 18, they weren't much older than 18.
Right. And it also says, according to CBS News, at least one firearm has been recovered from the scene already. So that tells me there has to have been multiple firearms or weapons involved.
Mhm.
Right. Well, there were 2 people that were arrested, so there's at least 2 firearms.
Three.
Three.
Okay. One thing I want to point out also, if it wasn't for a couple of gutsy Chiefs fans who tackled the original shooter, this could have been deadlier than it came out to be. Not saying, let me be clear, I'm not saying that this isn't bad, but we could be talking about hundreds instead of 22 wounded and 1 dead.
Yeah.
And they did stuff, and they did something that, not everybody would too. I talked about in ET Sports. You usually have, in a situation like this, it's fight or flight. Usually you run for cover or you choose to attack. And those who chose to attack and get the guy apprehended, I mean, that takes a lot of guts. Those are heroes.
Well, Ben, what are your thoughts? First initial reaction we heard this story.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much a lot what Nick was saying. Just mixed emotions everywhere. Every year, unfortunately, just feels like we have unfortunate events, and for a day that was supposed to be a celebration, turned out for it to be specifically something that us as a society, unfortunately, have to deal with. And it sucks. My condolences, my prayers go out to the Kansas City community. And I do really feel that the gun law, specifically in some areas than not, are a lot more stricter than others. And I just think that something has to stop with this, because it's just getting to a point where I'm not saying people are taking advantage of specifically some of the gun laws in specific different areas, but if you go into a mass type of area of people, it's like you're trying to have fun with this, and it's just like 1 or 2 people could just ruin what could have been a great celebration. It sucks. I mean, I was disheartened. It was tough for me to actually sleep the day, I think it was this week, after it happened, just like, because you just never know. And that's why they say hug your loved ones, tell people that you love each other, because it really is tough. It really is.
It's a cruel society, and just to not, and I hate politics. Tom knows this for a fact. That I worked in it for almost 4
When
years.
you work in politics, you learn to hate politics.
Yes, well, Nick, you do too. But working in it for 4 years, I saw a lot between COVID, the unfortunate killings, race, all across New York City. It's not a fun topic by any means whatsoever when these incident happens. But just to quickly go to a point that Ben said, Missouri, unfortunately, is a carry state. So is a gun carry state. They don't have the same regulations that like a New York or a Boston or anywhere near us has laws that you need a conceal and permit to carry. So am I saying that that's the reason? No, but that doesn't necessarily help it by any means. But hopefully this guy or 2 guys, if they're saying they lock him up, don't let him out. This is a senseless act by every means. And it sucks because by the time we got to the 4th quarter and overtime of the Super Bowl, we had a good game of football going on. And this wiped it all away, unfortunately. So
I was also going to say really quick, Nick, is this actually happened specifically right at the end of the parade. So a lot of the fans essentially thought it was like fireworks that pretty much were going off like right around Union Station. And then a lot of people that I was reading on videos and stuff that were going to interview, they're like, no, it's not fireworks, it's gunshot. And I just think a lot of people were just absolutely, they had no idea how to feel. And, like Thomas mentioned, there are some people that are, tackling. They're pretty much going for their own personal lives to essentially not make this situation not worse than it already was. So it just absolutely disheartening. It's awful on all specific areas.
I mean, we need security. That's the only thing I can really say. But
I was going to say to address that,
able to have security for it.
Well, to address that. So the article, and shout out to our producer Dan for sending us this in real time as we're talking here. About, of course, thousands of people attended this event, and it was just over 800 police officers who were on hand for
it's not enough.
An event. It is not enough. You are right, but I think that this goes into a topic that I guess stretches beyond sports. Actually, stretches more than it is sports. About number of people going into the police force that's gone down over the last decade plus.
But I just think about that for a second, though. 800 police officers compared to what they're supposedly saying 1 million people. That ratio is impossible. The cops are going to get eaten alive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I also think though,
you get enough cops. I mean, I don't know how big the police force is in Kansas City. I mean,
it's definitely a lot less than here.
Considering where we're from, we don't even consider Kansas City a city. It is in the middle of nowhere.
And again, we're not making. And let's be clear, we're not making fun of it. We're just talking about
just from our point of view, it's smaller than New York. I mean, to us, there's maybe a couple of cities that are actual cities. New York, LA, Chicago. Everything else doesn't count to us.
To Nick's point, if we in New York are struggling with our own issues about not enough people being in the police force, what do you think's going on in Kansas City?
Forget it. Kansas City got eaten alive. Now, I don't know if I can blame them.
Kansas City has a much bigger crime problem than New York does, just like most cities in the Midwest.
I mean, I think some New Yorkers would argue over the last couple of years if that's an issue.
It's just objective. I'm not saying New York doesn't have a crime problem too, but I mean, cities in the Midwest are much more crime-ridden.
Agree.
Than New York is. It's a much smaller city. Obviously, you don't have to. I mean, New York is huge compared to Kansas City. But you'd think you'd be able to get enough cops. But it's also not just the number of cops there. It's also what are they doing? What
protocols
kind of security do you have? You could have 1 million cops there and something like this could still happen.
Do they have protocols for these events? Do they when the cops come, when they say, all right, we have 800 cops, do they talk to these 800 cops and say, hey, are we prepared in case of an active shooter event? You know how they teach us all when we were younger in school, hey, all right, this is what you do in an active shooter event happen. I work at a childcare now. I had to sit through an 8-hour seminar, 4 hours of it being on school security, how they now have, and not that I'm joking, but they have what I like to call the Men in Black button on the wall, where you open the thing and push the button and it signals the police. A panic button that signals the police in under 2 minutes. And then they gave us all these rules about how we have to put the kids behind the lunchroom cafeteria wall and all this stuff. Was there an active protocol for any of this? And could they even prepare for it? Well, if that was such a thing?
There likely could have been, but I mean, no protocol can stop.
Of course.
Other than
no protocol
you really
can be
kind of have to have security to be able to get into the parade. That's the only way. Maybe if there is some type of metal detector to enter the parade.
But the thing is, when you have the parade route as long as it is in an open public as it is, it's not you're not going to be able to get everyone.
No, but it's better than nothing. And maybe they did have that. I don't know. But I mean, it sounds like these guys got into the parade with guns. I think
that's
a
on
really
the police
good solution to this is don't allow people to get into the parade with guns.
Right. My point, the last thing I'll finish with is, was there an entrance point to getting in? If there was, then that's on the police.
There likely was, but I don't. There likely was, but I don't know. I mean, I'm unfamiliar with Super Bowl parades.
Well, all right, we'll leave it at this. It's an unfortunate situation. Hopefully they put him away forever and we don't have to hear about this person again. But how can you talk about the Super Bowl without this unfortunate incident?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you can't.
Yeah.
But we are going to try to, with it being our last episode of the year. And so the Kansas City Chiefs are once again your Super Bowl champions, becoming the first since the 03-04 Patriots to repeat as Super Bowl champions. And now, if you could hear from all the post-game talk, they're all but ready to go and try to be the first ever three-peat Super Bowl champions next year, defeating the 49ers as they did back in 2020. Well, that was for the 2019 season, but you get my point. In February of 2020.
By the way, not even being the Super Bowl betting favorite next year, but we'll get to that later.
Right. First three quarters sucked. Commercials were halftime show.
Usher was terrible.
But
I disagree. I kind of liked it.
He didn't do any of his old stuff.
I agree with you on that, but I compare. I know the halftime shows the last couple years have been just kind of there. This one kind of. It wasn't awful, but it wasn't as bad as I thought.
Ben, I disagree on that. I thought Rihanna last year was good. I thought Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg 2 years ago was fantastic.
Well, that one was a classic Super Bowl show with Dre, Snoop Dogg, and a bunch of others, Eminem, 50 Cent.
My dad, when he went to the Super Bowl, the Pats Giants 07. Obviously, don't want to talk about it, but he had, of course, be there. He, of course, had to be at that one, and he saw Tom Petty. Yeah. So he was just like, yeah, that's like a classic.
You don't get classic performances anymore. By the way, did anyone else think that Usher was like creeping all over Alicia Keys?
That was the point I think that was the point. I think they knew that.
Apparently, he got married during the Super Bowl weekend.
He got married the
after
day
the
of the Super Bowl.
event. Yeah, right after the halftime show, I think.
No, I think it was before the halftime show.
Oh, was it before the halftime show? But like, it was kind of creepy. Like they were just hanging all over.
I also would bet they probably rehearsed that many times, and that was probably like I don't think that was in any way unexpected. I think that was a part of the performance.
Well, there was that, and then of course he had to do the typical "let me take my shirt off and show off my body," which was just creepy too.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
They all do that though.
Just like Adam Levine a few years ago.
50 Cent did it. He had a shirt on because he got kind of fat.
Yeah, it's kind of true, actually.
When they get heavy, they don't take their shirts off. But
his part of that performance was so bad, by the way. But
like Usher, also, he's like 45 years old. For somebody who's that old,
he's in incredible shape. Body. Yeah, he's in incredible
really shape for somebody at 45. I mean, most 45-year-olds use being 45 as an excuse to get fat.
Who else was doing the show? It was also well, Her was the guitarist. I didn't know that, so I looked it up.
Lil Jon appeared.
Lil Jon, and then the other one who does the State Farm commercials. The rapper does the State Farm commercials.
Does the State Farm? Oh, Ludacris.
Ludacris.
Yeah, Ludacris.
It was very odd. It looked like Colin Kaepernick hairdos all over the stage, by the way. Like, no?
Well, what was I going to say?
All right, can we get off of the topic of people being fat?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, the Little John part I thought was like that I thought was a bit unexpected because they were doing "Turn Down for What," and that's not an Usher song.
It's not.
No, it's not. It's a Little John song,
right?
Well, no, it's an LMFAO song.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I meant.
But Lil Jon is in it.
That's what I meant. He was accompaniment on that song. All right, let's get to the.
But at least there was no like wardrobe malfunction.
Yeah, all right. That'd be fair enough.
Well, maybe Usher caused his own wardrobe malfunction, but that's a whole different issue.
All right, but the fourth quarter and overtime is really where the game was at. Fourth quarter was incredible.
Well, the first three quarters was basically a snooze fest.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I could have slept through
that. Fourth quarter was great. Overtime, unbelievable. Fourth quarter overtime, the action got really freaking tense. And honestly, it was anybody's game. And I don't know, guys. Do you guys feel like the Chiefs won or the 49ers lost more? Because I feel like the 49ers blew a number of opportunities between the fourth quarter and overtime to put that game away.
I'll give you two words. Magic Mahomes. That's what I'll give you. I mean,
Yeah, fair enough.
that guy does not lose games down the stretch at all whatsoever. Now, did the 49ers offense kind of struggle down the stretch? They also committed a bad 15-yard penalty to get them closer to the end zone. I don't know. And then the defense just quit, like from the fourth quarter on. I don't know what happened there.
I think they were
Brock
tired.
Purdy-
I think
What?
I think they were fatigued. I agree with Ben. I think fatigue really got to them.
And Brock
Mhm.
Purdy, which everyone said Brock Purdy was going to be the issue, he had over 300
He was
yards.
fine. Yeah.
He had over 300 yards. I think he threw a touchdown. But I don't know. The defense was really the issue for the Niners, not Brock Purdy.
And honestly, I mean, the game goes into overtime. Let's talk about the big point that we're talking. The game goes into overtime, and the 49ers elect to receive the ball first, which already
I don't
brought
buy
a
it.
number of complaints.
I don't buy it.
What
What?
don't you buy?
That they forgot the rules.
Oh, I don't know if people keep like ripping them for that. I don't know if that really had anything to do with it.
Right, but the players came out after the game and said that we didn't know the rules.
Right, but did Shanahan not know the rules?
He said that they were going to take the ball, and then, if I'm not mistaken, they said the reason that they also wanted the ball first is because they claimed Kansas City was going to go for the 2-point conversion. That's why they wanted the ball first.
I mean,
Which-
that
You even
likely
had
is
Chiefs-
true.
You even had Chiefs players pretty much asking like why they went first because they're just like, yeah, it's almost like they gave it into their lap and they're like, oh, thank you.
And
But
honestly,
here-
that's what happened.
based on the way the game was going and the momentum, I think the Chiefs would have won anyway. I don't think
Sure.
it
Well,
likely made a difference.
Guys, here's the issue that I have is that the 49ers still managed to score on that overtime drive, which means all they needed to do was stop the Chiefs from scoring, and then they would have won the Super Bowl. Now, on one hand, is that tough to do when you give 8 minutes to Patrick Mahomes? Absolutely. But on the other hand, there were, again, a number of times during that overtime period where they had Mahomes and company on the ropes and
The
could have put
fourth
it
and
away.
one. The 4th and 1 play, you knew after Mahomes converted on 4th and 1, you knew the game was over.
Yeah, I cannot
Certainly
believe.
felt over.
Yeah, it's certainly because I couldn't believe Pat Mahomes was able to get around
Well,
that. But
Going
I knew it was
shotgun.
over. I knew it was over when it was under the minute and he had the big pass to Kelsey. I pretty much knew at that point in time. I thought, yeah, the Niners just are tired. They don't have an answer for the way that they're executing down the stretch.
well,
Wait,
if
I
it's-
will have to say, has nobody mentioned the blocked extra point?
That and the
Oh,
punt.
you're talking
Yeah.
about-
Not for that
that-
blocked extra point. Like I think
Well,
the Chiefs might lose that because
Well,
they
that's
have to
'cause they
score
were-
a touchdown on that last
Yeah.
drive.
Mhm.
That
Right.
where they had to kick where they kicked the field goal to tie it.
Well, there would have been no OT at that point if that.
Right.
Right.
also
So what I'm
felt-
saying is that like how do we know they would have been able to score the touchdown?
I felt the
Right.
Niners defense also was a bit conservative, kind of late down the
Well,
stretch too. Like
That's what
Well,
Tommy
let's-
said.
Well, let's talk
haven't
about
looked-
that.
But the Niners have regressed through, like since the regular season. Like
But guys,
the
you
Niners
saw-
looked better against the Chiefs than they did against the Packers and the Lions. So like I don't think you can really like the Niners are what they are. Like the Niners, people keep like you guys are talking about the Niners losing the game, and there's some truth to that. But I mean, they weren't any worse than they were throughout the rest of the playoffs. I
Here's
mean,
my-
they weren't impressive.
Here's my issue with everything, guys. The scheme that they were running during the overtime.
Prevent.
The prevent defense prevents nothing. And I get there are times when you use the prevent defense. Under 8 minutes in overtime against Patrick Mahomes is
Mahomes
not
had
that
all
time.
day. Mahomes had
That's
all
when you have
day to pass.
that's when you have to go pretty much all for the marbles. And this is what I pretty
That's
much
when you
felt.
go man to man. That's when
Yeah.
you blitz. That's not when you do prevent.
Here's the
this
other
is-
issue. Here's the other issue I have also. So they lose, and Wilkes gets fired after the game.
Yeah.
One season. This is not Wilkes' fault.
They held the Chiefs to I think only like what 20 points.
Yeah.
Both teams, by the way, Vegas has a creepy way of knowing what the number. It was 47.5. I think it was 47 points exact, right? 25-22.
Yes.
So Vegas obviously knew something there.
But,
Well,
but here's my
They must have thought that Steve Wilkes was not a good coordinator. They must have thought that the scheme was bad. That's
but
I
again,
think that's
but I
ridiculous that he
question
got fired.
No,
But
after one season, I agree.
after not just one season where they won a conference championship. That, to me, I'm sorry, this loss is once again on
last year they
Kyle
made
Shanahan.
the conference championship and lost. So, and they didn't even have a quarterback. So this year, that's what they were expecting to make a Super Bowl.
I guess, but again, to me, this loss falls on Shanahan. I'm sorry, and I think it's time to have a discussion about Kyle Shanahan. He can't win the big game. He can't.
Well,
And it's double digit again.
Game. He's not good in big moments, if
Well,
anything.
Yeah.
let's clarify one thing that you're talking about, Tom. So he, a couple days later, gave a press conference. Someone said to him, "You can't win the big games," and he basically called that categorically false. Well, and they said they won a bunch of games, but you didn't win the big game.
Well,
The big game.
Hold up. He does have a point. He's not wrong when he says they can't win a big game. They
But-
do have to win big games to get there.
But what do you get judged on? Winning the championship games or winning the Super Bowl?
No, I don't disagree. And I don't disagree that he's not great in big moments. But at the same time, this is also like a dynasty of a Chiefs team.
Mhm.
Agree.
Like nobody else even got there. Like it's more than you could say about 30 other teams.
What are
Well,
the three teams that he
And by
lost?
the way, who is his quarterback? Brock Purdy. Like it is honestly better than you can say about 30 other teams.
I want to point out one thing also. The reason, but the defense struggled down the stretch for the Niners in the playoffs.
Shanahan's an offensive guy.
No.
Yep.
That wasn't my point. My point is Brock Purdy throwing the football saved them in the games, not the defense. The defense. If Brock Purdy didn't throw for the great games that he had, they'd be sitting and playing golf like 2 weeks ago. If it wasn't for him, and so that's why they say Shanahan's an offensive guy. He is an offensive guy.
I get it, but at the same time, when you're known as, you were 1 quarter away from beating the Chiefs twice and you couldn't get it done, and you're known as the offensive coordinator on a team that blew the legendary 28-3 lead in a Super Bowl, you probably have earned the right to be considered in the bridesmaid, never the bride category.
Well, we could say that was Andy Reid until he got to Kansas City.
You can't, though, because with the Falcons, he was a coordinator. He wasn't the head coach. That falls more on Dan Quinn than it does on Shanahan. But it's
irony.
true. Like,
Yeah.
What?
Irony. Now that he's a head coach again.
Like, it does fall more on Dan Quinn than it does on him because he wasn't the head coach. But also, he's 44 years old. 44 in coaching terms is like a teenager. Like, no, coaches that age rarely ever do win the big game. I mean, this narrative for how long? For like a decade and a half has been going on about Andy Reid.
That's what I was saying.
Andy Reid is arguably the best head coach of all time. And that's because he got old. I mean, like when coaches get older, they typically, not like geriatric old, but like
experience.
Older with experience, they do get better. And Kyle Shanahan can coach another 20, 30 years. Like it's absurd to like make this, to just categorize him as can never win the big game when he has so much more time. And not only that, he doesn't exactly have, like, his quarterback is Brock Purdy. He's not exactly.
But I'm going to counter that, Nick. But he has Christian McCaffrey, was probably the best player in the NFL as a running back.
George Kittle.
Brandon Ayuk. Well, let's talk. Well, George Kittle, like I said during our preview show, I think George Kittle has been. Nick,
it has to do with his point about Andy Reid. Okay. I don't want to forget that. So what I was going to say, just to counterbalance that Andy Reid point, is that Andy Reid, people were making this point after the game. Donovan McNabb, Patrick Mahomes. Donovan McNabb could not win the big game at all. Right. Patrick Mahomes is a much better quarterback than Donovan McNabb ever was. So I think that also helps.
But I will also say about the 49ers, you have the best, probably the best player in the NFL in Christian McCaffrey. You have a wide receiver core that is Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, who, if the 49ers had won the game, either McCaffrey or Jennings should have been the MVP.
McCaffrey.
Right. But George Kittle as well. Although
but I wouldn't do anything the whole game.
But what I was Nick, but the one thing I will give credit to you on that is I think Kittle, I can't hold Shanahan on Kittle because I think Kittle was an absolute bust this season. He was pathetic.
Yeah. I mean, it looked like he was lost.
They do have a fair amount of skilled players, although every other playoff team also has a lot of skilled players. And I think the most important part is that his quarterback is Brock Purdy. And I'm not saying Brock Purdy's bad. I'm just saying how he's a good player, but how many other coaches or teams could have gone to the Super Bowl with Brock Purdy as their quarterback? The answer is not many. I mean, there's maybe a few other.
Wait a minute.
But if Brock Purdy was on the Jets, do you think they're a playoff team?
No. Hell no, they're not.
Like, okay, so there is something there. And I agree. Like, he's not like Bill Belichick. He's not I'm not going to categorize him as a great head coach yet.
Okay, but Nick, how do you
categorize? I'm not going to say I'm not going to say he can't win the big game. I don't think that's fair either, because we haven't seen enough of him in the big game.
Yeah, but how many Super Bowls has he been to?
What?
3.
And he hasn't won any.
It's been 3.
Yeah.
The Niners in 2019.
Well, he's talking about combined. It's been 3.
Oh, you're including the
Now, I would say, all right, Ben, let's just technically go with 2.
Too.
Let's go 2. Now,
but here's another thing though. At his age, like, we could have easily wrote off Bill Belichick as a head coach when he was around this age.
Sure.
How did he do with the Browns? I mean, like,
not great.
I mean, like, I'm just not going to write him off as can't win the big game. When we did the same thing to Andy Reid, we could have done the same thing to Bill Belichick when he was around this age. I'm not exactly sure if Bill Belichick. I'm not exactly sure how old Bill Belichick is, but he's probably close to 70.
he's over 70.
Over 70. Okay, so 30 years ago, what was Bill Belichick's reputation as a head coach?
Not great.
Okay, so you could kind of say the same thing about a lot of other great head coaches.
He's 71. Yeah.
Yeah. So 30 when he 27 years ago, did he win any Super Bowls?
No.
Okay. So we could have
Mark, then here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put you in the position of the general manager. I'm putting you in Lynch's position now.
Oh, nice.
How are you going to make that team a Super Bowl team? Especially because, your next coming free agency quarterback class, unless the Cowboys decide they don't want Dak anymore, it's not great. You're going to have Kirk Cousins, and the Vikings are going to go to hell and back to make sure they get him back. And then Baker Mayfield, but the Bucs are going to go to hell and back to make sure he stays with them. What do? You might be stuck with Brock Purdy for the future.
Yeah, you could be. But here's the thing. They're closer than anybody else is. I mean, they made the Super Bowl and lost, and they were in overtime. I mean, like, of course, that's not ideal. You want to win. But the thing, and I do get that it hurts more because the higher the climb, the harder the fall. But they're closer than everybody else. Just looking at it rationally, they're closer than anybody else. So, I mean, they're doing a better job than 30 other teams. It is kind of hard for me to be to rip on them. And by the way, the Chiefs are a dynasty level team. So,
without Tyreek,
rely on like the Chiefs losing.
Without Tyreek, who they lost last year.
He's had to coach against 2 now dynasty teams. He had to go against Brady and to go against Mahomes. So it's like I agree some of it with Nick in terms of Shanahan. I mean, I do kind of agree on both sides. I don't think he has won yet the big game, but he's also faced some really good teams, and some that has to rely on the players.
The one thing I want to say also is the phrase I was going to use before, and Tom, I use this phrase a lot: embarrassment of riches for the Niners. They have so many weapons. That's why they're getting overly criticized. When you have a Kittle, you have an Ayuk, which I'll get to in a second because he did some pretty strange things after the game. Also,
that was going to lead to my point to Nick DiMartino. Then, how much longer do you think the door is open then for Shannon and the 49ers?
I mean, I don't know.
At least 1 or 2 seasons.
20 years without winning any. I mean, like, eventually the door closed on Andy.
I would say, I mean, with the current formation of the team as is now, the one that went
to 2 years for this offseason. I mean, he might go out and seek a trade.
He's not a free agent, though.
No, but I think for him specifically, he wants to try to do himself.
So let's, Nick, you want to bring up the Ayuk point then?
Yeah. So what I'm referring to, excuse me, is that Brandon Ayuk's, there's 2 incidents. Brandon Ayuk went on his Instagram page and did one of those blackout posts.
Cryptic.
Cryptic posts, and basically said that I was not throwing the ball enough during the Super Bowl. And on top of that,
saying something too.
His brother said it, but he also said it in a
something.
And his girlfriend.
And, that was the other piece. His girlfriend did a video basically say, I think this is the last time we're stepping into Levi's and not coming back. Now, people remember.
If you're an athlete's wife or girlfriend, Don't say anything like that because you're not helping him.
And again, that's not a disrespect thing that you're saying. Like, you're just saying like it's not helping the case of Brandon Ayuk whatsoever.
Right. Because if a player's wife or girlfriend says something, people often assume it has something to do with him. Because it often does.
So he might be gone because of the way he's acting. I don't know, but
I mean, he could. But the thing is, I don't think it's necessarily a huge deal. I mean, they could certainly get another receiver. And by the way, like wide receivers' value is not that high. I mean, even really good wide receivers. I mean, the Chiefs didn't lose a step since losing Tyreek Hill, and he's one of the best receivers in the league.
And McCaffrey
being
a dual
Super
threat.
Bowls after he left.
Right. So it's you can't say that Tyreek Hill was holding them back. It's just that, like, I don't know. I don't think it's a huge deal. Maybe Kittle needs to have a little bit better of a season.
Oh, he needs
to show up.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if he was more of a threat? If he was more of a threat, maybe they win that game.
I mean, they could have won if he was a bit more of a threat. Definitely.
It looked like he got hurt in the second half.
I don't know. But the thing you can say is, like, the Niners are at least right now going in the right direction. I mean, last year they made the NFC Championship game, lost it largely because they didn't have a quarterback. This year they win the conference and make the Super Bowl and lose. I mean, they're doing something right.
They literally just lost with Patrick Mahomes with God mode. Let's be
right. But at the same time, they now got to take the step and win. That's going
to be my question here. Is that
but if that next step to that level, then I mean, I think the arguments that you're making would be more applicable to a team like, say, the Bills.
I be crossing sports, but it reminds me of my Celtics, a team that has a decent amount of talent year by year in the last couple of years, that gets really, really deep in the postseason, has really good, great regular seasons, but they can't finish it. Like they just can't get to the top. You know for a fact that they have the talent to do it. It's a matter of doing it.
Is that, like, the Celtics, like, they don't. I think they're likely not a talented team enough to, like.
But it goes back to my question.
Yeah,
again.
I mean,
if the upgrade then that's needed is quarterback, what do you do if you're the Niners now?
Look, I don't know. That's always a tough.
I think Purdy's fine there.
I mean,
I don't
because if you're talking about a 1-season turnaround, Lynch would need to pull off the trade of the century to happen.
The last thing, because we'll wrap this up and then we'll get to all the awards and stuff. But here's the deal. The excuse of Mr. Irrelevant is now out the window. Like, they can't use that anymore. Like, he had a great playoffs. He's now got to go out there. If he's underperforming, they're going to have to find a way to replace it if he's bad. So he either has to win, and their expectations are so high that it's really Super Bowl or bust now for the Niners. There's no championship level or bust now. So they got to win.
Let's also be real, too. The one guy I think a lot of people, they know about him, but they don't give a lot of credit for. Look at Steve Spagnuolo. This is now another Super Bowl this guy's won as defensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. He's been asked multiple times to be a head coach, but I just think he loves being a defensive coach. And he, of course, when I was looking at this specific game, I picked the Chiefs because of him. Is because he has that Super Bowl experience. Of course, he beat the best Patriots team of all time. So I'm like, I am not going against that guy, and I'm not going against Patrick Mahomes. And that's why, of course, I had the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl.
Also, you can't bet about against the Chiefs. We tried for most of the playoffs.
Yeah, I tried too.
I feel like if they had to win as they did this year with all the struggles they had this year and such, I feel like they're going to be the favorite. Now, if somehow Travis Kelce ends up retiring to live his life with Tay-Tay, maybe a different story, but I highly doubt that happens.
He's not going to retire.
Wow. It took us 45 minutes to finally make a Taylor Swift reference. Look at that.
We should have had betting odds on that.
Yeah, we should have.
Yeah, really. All right. Let's go through now some of the awards. Obviously, they held NFL honors a couple of days before the Super Bowl. Let's look through some of these. A lot of Browns and Texans bring off all the awards. However, the MVP goes to one Lamar Jackson. Guys,
not a surprise. Not a surprise at all.
I'll say this. I feel like they should do the award show after the Super Bowl's over because you look at the whole entire season for the regular season, Lamar Jackson probably is deserved. But then you look at the playoffs when it really matters most, he's been criticized in the last couple of years.
It's
But
a
then
regular
voting
season
performance.
award.
It's a regular season award, though.
Regular season.
Right.
Steph
award.
Curry
I
won
just-
unanimous MVP in 2016.
Yeah, I just part of me thinks at times like the awards maybe can wait until the end of the season, but if it's just regular season, then yeah. I just think that it's kind of a bad look, or since you're like, oh yeah, you're the MVP,
Well,
but then look at what happened in the playoffs.
but we could say if you're going to go based on the
But then-
playoffs, then
but
Lamar
then-
wouldn't have won.
Okay, but then I'll throw something out there. Should the NFL honors be held during MLK Day weekend, right before they do the big wild card weekend?
It's not going to matter because it's a regular season
Yeah.
award, regardless.
It's I could be wrong about this, but it's voted on before the playoffs, right?
It
Yes.
is. It's voted before the
Yeah.
playoffs.
That's why I
So-
threw that out there.
So I don't think
Yeah.
that makes as
I don't-
big a deal.
I don't really care personally because I never really watch it.
I don't think any of us
I
watch
don't really
it.
watch it.
Not
either. I
really.
just-
Because
Okay,
I
but
don't
let
care. It's not like a Jet player is going to be winning it.
You're funny.
All right,
Hey,
well,
Sauce
by the way,
Gardner. I could really see Sauce getting it at some point.
all of us predicted that Pat Mahomes was going to win the MVP, but of course we were all wrong there. But
It's
listen,
not a bad
you know,
pick.
but at the same time, off to what Ben said, about Lamar and losing the conference championship right before getting this award. I think you consider what happened at conference championship, and I think you can kind of consider what he went through in the season. I think Lamar, you could argue, makes Lamar deserving of that award because without him, that Ravens team is nothing.
He was the
and-
leading rusher
Fair.
in the game that they lost
Yeah.
in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
I
He
mean,
does
I
all the
can definitely
rushing
agree
and
with
all
that.
the passing for that team.
But the point is though is that like you can't criticize him winning MVP because of what they did in the playoffs when they vote on it before
Right.
the playoffs even happen.
Correct.
Yeah.
And like I said, honestly, you look at that conference championship game, I think it cements it. Maybe you could have the argument of Mahomes at that point, but still, I think that kind of cements what Lamar did in this
No.
season. He had an unbelievable season. And
Lamar-
to think, guys,
Yeah.
he almost wasn't a member of the Ravens this season when
Well-
he had his little holdout.
That's the crazy part. Lamar is now undervalued, probably for what he's actually being paid for the amount that he does on the field. If he could play defense, I think he would do it, if possible, to get this team to win.
Because
Not that I'm saying he should.
But if Lamar is not part of this team, the AFC North becomes the Browns division.
Yeah.
Agreed, totally. But Lamar is the MVP. He is the most valuable player. This team is a bust without Lamar. They probably don't make the playoffs without Lamar.
Mm-hmm.
They're not a number one seed without Lamar in any way.
Absolutely. All right. Offensive player of the year, Christian McCaffrey, bar none.
Yeah, this is not even a
100% agree.
shocker.
Yeah.
He, of course,
I
was
agree.
really good all year. Really good Super Bowl. I mean, the Niners' best player besides McCaffrey, you would think it's Samuel, Ayuk, or Kittle. It was Juwan Jennings. And I think that pretty much speaks a lot for that Chiefs defense
He
because
kept them in the game.
yeah, that's the scary part is, and I this is where I agree with Nick about Kyle Shanahan is like he was able to essentially scheme that Niners offense successfully without a lot of their production from their better receivers. So you have to, of course, give Shanahan a lot of that credit because they could have been like, oh yeah, we're gonna just try to get Debo and all these guys going, but they're like, no, if they're not going, we're gonna try to get somebody like Juwan Jennings involved, and he almost won them the game.
I mean, McCaffrey, like the same thing with Lamar. If McCaffrey's not on this team, they're probably not in the Super Bowl. Is that
Probably.
fair?
Yeah.
I mean, you
Uh,
got to have a running specifically balanced. So yeah.
All right.
I mean, I just want to say one thing. Do we remember the trade between the Panthers and the Niners, what that trade was? Because I guarantee you the Niners said it was the best trade they ever made in the history of their organization.
It was Christian
Because at that point,
McCaffrey.
the Panthers had completely given up.
Yeah, it was Christian McCaffrey for a
Here it is.
second, third, and fourth round pick in 2023, and a fifth round pick.
Kind
in
of felt like AJ
2024.
Brown, right? Like AJ Brown went to the Eagles because the
Mhm.
Titans were kind of starting to fall off a bit. It was kind of
But-
like that, I'd say.
It was probably the most lopsided trade in NFL history, to be honest. And the Niners are saying thank you ever since. But
All right, defensive player of the year goes to Myles Garrett of the Browns. Now, a bunch of us had Sauce Gardner, T.J. Watt, Mike Parsons.
people were
Uh,
angry, by the way, that it wasn't TJ Watt for some reason.
don't-
But he got
I don't-
hurt.
I was gonna say what I think got hurt this season. I don't think
He
this
did.
is a bad. I don't
He
think this
gets
is
hurt
really
a lot, unfortunately.
I don't think this is really a bad choice. Miles Garrett
No.
has played a very pivotal role for the Browns defense that's emerged ever since the drafting of Baker Mayfield.
I mean, I'm trying to look up the stats because I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think he led the league in sacks, if I'm not mistaken,
He had like 14, 15, I think.
which is a lot.
Which is still really good. Yes.
Yeah.
So
No,
this
I
man's a
look at
beast.
this specifically here. I'm just like, you know, you can't really go wrong with Miles Garrett at all. I mean, he is a game changer. I mean, that Browns defense specifically a lot this year was really good because of him. So I can't just look at him and be like, yeah, I can't go against this at all.
He's a threat. He's a complete defensive threat. You almost have to put 3 guys on him, not just 2, just so he doesn't get to your quarterback and hurt him. Like, so I just look at his stats. He's got 14 sacks, which is a lot. That's a lot of sacks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Like TJ Watt would probably be number 2, but he missed like 4 or 5 games, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
And
lot.
how many did Parsons
many.
What,
They
Micah
have, like,
Parsons?
10. I mean, I thought in the playoffs he really struggled. I didn't think there was a lot of him, you know, in the playoffs with the way that Dallas defense played against Green Bay.
He had 14. He also had
Honestly,
14.
Okay.
honestly, you know who could have gone up there in addition to Parsons from the Cowboys? How about Deron Bland with his 6 or 7 pick sixes in the season?
Oh, I
Yeah.
forgot about that. You're
Very
right.
unheard of. Yeah.
I think Deron Bland should have had a case for Defensive Player of the Year as well.
But Myles Garrett is just on an island by himself. Like, of course, Nick and I will remember this, the old Revis Island days when we actually had a great defensive player that cared until he decided to go on his own delusional mental fest.
Well, the thing with like corners and all with like really good secondaries or corners individually, to the point where they have nicknames and all that, they only last for a very short amount of time.
Maybe a season or 2 at best.
A couple, maybe 3 at the most. I mean, the Legion of Boom.
And he got way overpaid, if I'm not mistaken, Revis also, and then
He
he
did.
fell off.
But hopefully this next person, after the year they had, it's not just for a season or 2. But I'm not talking in the defensive end. I'm talking about the offensive end. Offensive Rookie of the Year, guys. No doubter, no
This is a
brainer.
no-doubter.
CJ Stroud.
Yep.
What a year. I mean, there was no freshman jinx, no rookie jinx. This guy is the typical version of how far can I throw the football down the field, then where can my receiver be?
He brought that four-win Texans team to theoretically a playoff team, which I think could essentially be deeper next year in the playoffs. If they get some pieces this offseason, they pretty much held the Ravens, within reach at halftime of their playoff game.
I even think some credit needs to be given that they beat the Browns in the first point, that we were questioning how CJ Stroud would do against it.
Yeah.
Right. I see how CJ Stroud would do against a powerhouse Browns defense, and he performed admirably against them.
Let me give you some key stats also. 4,108 yards all year. For a rookie, that's impressive. Over 4,000 yards. 23 touchdowns, 5 picks. 5 picks is pretty impressive for a rookie season.
Yeah,
Also,
really good.
That ratio is
for a team-
nuts.
Especially for a
he
team
had-
that's had quarterback problems in so long.
and a completion percentage of 64%, which is unheard of also. So this guy is only going to get better as he grows, and hopefully they'll bring in some more pieces around him, even though they had a great wide receiver core until they got hurt by the end of the season going into the playoffs. But who was their running back again? It was Singletary?
Singletary and they had somebody else. I forgot.
But Singletary wasn't bad. He just
No, he
was
wasn't
not,
bad.
not durable. That's part of
Yeah.
Damian Pierce. Damian
Dameon
too.
Pierce, thank you. Yeah.
That's the guy I always forget because I remember Singletary, but not Pierce. But this guy is insane. I see MVPs down the line for this guy.
I think so
100%.
too. By the
look at
way,
the AFC. I mean, sorry to cut you off, Tom. Outside of Burrow, Lamar, and I mean, obviously Mahomes. It's kind of Mahomes at the top, and then pretty much everybody else. CJ Stroud should be in their second tier. I personally think that he can be next year.
With a much more sound and more chemistry for that team, they will go a long way.
by the way, just like the Jets last year, the Texans back-to-back year, that we have an offense and defensive rookie of the year on the same team. Defensive rookie of the year went to Will Anderson. A bunch of us thought that it was going to end up being Jalen Carter
Carter
of the Eagles,
Yeah.
but no, it's Will Anderson. And I remember that the Texans, it was unbelievable. They went and drafted CJ Stroud, then traded picks up in order to get Will Anderson. And I think that's paying off for them pretty well at this point.
Yeah, 7 sacks. Let's see what else if he has anything. But yeah, so 7 sacks. That's not bad for a defensive rookie of the year. He got hurt, right? If I'm not mistaken, towards the end also.
Yeah,
I thought, yeah, he was a little banged up. Otherwise, I think they would have gone further with him too.
Yeah.
But not a bad year.
This one, the next two, the last two, I should say, probably the more controversial ones. Coach of the year going to Kevin Stefanski of the Browns. You all might disagree. I don't think this is a bad choice, though.
What were the other candidates again besides him?
D'Amico Ryans, who I think should have been the coach of the year, in my opinion.
But I don't think I think
you had to give me Ryans.
I understand, but at the same time, I don't think you can call Kevin Stefanski a bad choice, considering they had, I think, the third best record in the AFC, and they didn't have Deshaun Watson, and they didn't have Nick Chubb, and at the quarterback helm, they actually ended up needing to go to Joe Flacco for the last few games of the season, and he did spectacularly.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Go ahead, Nick. I was just thinking D'Amico Ryans is because he essentially turned around that team, because that team for so long was in such a bad state that when you look at Coach of the Year candidates specifically, I thought that the Browns, specifically with Stefanski this year, was going to be a fine team. Essentially, the Texans, you had no idea what was going to happen. I mean, they were hoping that Stroud was going to be good, but he brought that team from a 4-win team to a playoff team. That has to give you some recognition to be a Coach of the Year.
Yeah, D'Amico's. I think they got this one very wrong. D'Amico Ryans should have been Coach of the Year. Like Ben said, is it a big surprise? Absolutely, by every means. CJ Stroud was not supposed to be this quarterback this soon. Like, he is progressing way above where he was. And now he's going to be top 10, even more close to the top 5 material starting next year, possibly. So, I don't know. We'll see. I'm not a huge fan of this, but
I mean, I personally don't care that much, but I do completely agree that D'Amico Ryans probably should have won. Considering as a rookie head coach, he completely turned the franchise around. Although I understand why Kevin Stefanski would win it. I just don't think he's a better choice than D'Amico Ryans. I mean, CJ Stroud is a rookie quarterback. The team was horrible last year, and he completely turned it around.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much what I could say. And the next one kind of goes.
Let's talk about that. Speaking of Flacco, Joe Flacco ended up getting the Comeback Player of the Year award, which inflamed a lot of people, considering that many people expected that this would have been Damar Hamlin.
I think Damar Hamlin should have won.
I disagree with everybody. I think this is absolutely right. I think because Joe Flacco comes in, takes over a team. What did they go through? 4 quarterbacks before they got to Flacco? Flacco comes in, performs, does what he needs to do. And how many games did Damar play this year?
Yeah, I think specifically that Damar Hamlin should have gotten an award for something, but this type of award here for somebody that should be playing a lot. And the thing was, Damar Hamlin, outside of him being kind of a special teamer, he just didn't play a lot. So I think that's why the league kind of looked at it being like, who was essentially the guy? And Joe Flacco was essentially a guy that the Browns are kind of in uncertainty for, and he brought that team still to the playoffs.
Here's my
to give Damar a problem, but he just did not give enough specifically on the field to get that recognition.
Okay, I agree with that, Ben, but at the same time, Joe Flacco only played the same amount of games that Damar Hamlin did, because Joe Flacco was essentially a backup.
Well, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. In any other year, I would absolutely agree with this. Except the thing is, Damar Hamlin literally died on the field and ended up playing and came back. I mean, like,
he
didn't know if he would live in that moment, let alone play football again.
I agree with that. However, can I throw a third option in there?
Okay.
Considering we're about to talk about our preseason.
I know who you're going to say.
And I brought this name up at that time.
Yep.
Tua Tagovailoa. Consider the guys. Listen to me. If Tua got another concussion during this season, we would have been considering we would have had to say, well, he has to consider retirement.
Well,
If
he
he had
was.
one concussion, right? If he had one concussion, somebody was going to have to sit him down and say, it's time to end your career. And then the Dolphins would not be in the position that they were in. Now, did they end up losing going on such a downturn that was bad? Yes, absolutely. But the fact that he was able to lead them to a playoff spot and go this close to winning the division, I think we're not giving Tua enough credit considering what happened in the 2022 season.
I agree with you, except I don't think that's as big of a comeback as Joe Flacco or DeMar Hamlin.
Even Joe
right.
Flacco?
Joe Flacco. Do you remember how bad Joe Flacco was with the Jets last year?
Oh God,
Nobody
don't get us
wanted
started
it.
with that.
I mean, Joe Flacco. It's unbelievable he even stepped on the field again.
He was basically holding the clipboard for Zach Wilson. That's how bad.
I'd be curious,
he
I'd be
looked
curious to see what type of
interested.
payday he gets this offseason because he's a free agent.
He's not going to get paid quarterback money, but he'll definitely get a
because
bump.
he's too old, but he's absolutely useful. And it also makes the Jets look really stupid.
Well, that's not the first time we've heard that statement before.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I had another guy, Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield essentially nobody wanted Baker, and essentially he got cut a couple times with the Panthers. He was with
He's
the
going to
Rams
get
a little
paid.
bit, but he went to a situation where he was able to succeed, and he got that team in the playoffs. I got to give him some credit.
I could see him
I
getting a
agree. He
Geno
deserves some
deal.
credit too. I just don't think either Tua or Baker Mayfield were as big of comebacks as Flacco.
No, I
So-
100% agree.
Do you remember when Geno got his 3-year, like $105 million deal with
Yeah.
Seattle? I could see Baker getting that type of deal somewhere,
I can definitely see the Bucks offering him
Yeah.
that to stay.
but I don't know. DeMar, like, even though, like you said, Nick, like he died for the game of football, I feel like he didn't have the impact that
At the same
Flacco
time,
had.
I wish they would have given him, if they weren't going to give
he
him
didn't
this.
have an impact on the game the way Flacco did, obviously.
That's
Right,
what I
I'm-
mean.
You
At
should
the
have
same-
gotten some type of award, though.
Yeah, I wish that some
Yeah.
award would have been created or something for him.
Well, what they would have invented one for DeMar Hamlin? Like, what are they going to do?
Well, I mean,
The
Cam
DeMar
Hayward,
Hamlin Award and give it to DeMar Hamlin?
I mean, he's not dead.
No, I mean they just sort of just gave him some type. Did they even recognize him like at all during the honors or no?
I think at the beginning, like the first game of the year, like Buffalo did a whole standing ovation, and
Okay.
I think they were in Buffalo for one of the first games of the year, so I think they did an honoree towards it. Don't get me wrong, what DeMar did, even off the field after the game, the massive amount of money they raised for his foundation, which it was like in the millions, if I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken. Like it went viral after his
Yeah.
incident happened. That's all great, but the award is on the field, not all off the field. Most of that is the recovery process and everything off the field. Flacco proved on the field, almost taking that team way further into the playoffs than possible.
All right, let's get off the awards. Let's look back at some of our predictions now.
Oh.
So, since
Boy.
Nick DiMartino was not part of this when we were doing all of this,
He
Nick
can ridicule
DiMartino-
everybody.
Yeah, he's going to be our ridiculer here. All right, start things off. Going in the order in which we talked about it during the preview show. AFC West, we all predicted the Chiefs. We were all correct.
Yeah.
NFC West, all predicted the 49ers. All correct.
Yeah.
AFC South, we all predicted the Jaguars. And
Oh man,
Ouch.
what a collapse.
they didn't even make the playoffs. They legitimately.
They just needed to win or have some form of combination of teams lose in order to get the playoffs in week 18. And they couldn't even get any of that.
There was a team in the AFC this year that made the playoffs. Oh, Pittsburgh. You would think Jacksonville against Buffalo would have been so much of a better match in the playoffs if the Jaguars just did not fuck it up. Let's be real. I mean, you had Mason Rudolph against Josh Allen. You just talked about the biggest mismatch at quarterback.
And now
I'm
Pittsburgh,
so happy.
and now Pittsburgh is having a whole debate about internally if Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph should be their quarterback for 24.
Justin Fields. I mean, they really want to go that route.
Hey, let's go over now to the NFC South.
Oh.
And we were all wrong. We all picked everybody but the Buccaneers.
I
Nick, I went with the Panthers.
Oh,
That's
I went
really
with the
bad.
I went with
That's
the
bad.
Falcons.
Yep.
Maybe if
So that's the
CJ
first-
Stroud had ordered scallops, they would have been able to win the division.
You're still gonna go back to that, aren't you?
It's one of the
Yeah.
funniest things I've ever heard.
You're not wrong.
Anybody else had the Panthers besides me? Oh wait. No, wait. I'm sorry. I picked the Saints. Okay.
Yeah, you picked the Saints.
You
I
picked
think
the
I
Saints.
picked the Panthers as a playoff team now.
I picked the Falcons. Nick
I picked the
Morganson picked the
Falcons.
Falcons.
Yeah.
Johnny picked the Panthers. Ben, you picked the Saints.
I did pick the Saints. Okay.
Paul picked the Panthers.
And Zan had the Falcons.
Yes. Going now to the AFC
AFC
North.
North.
Yeah!
Disrespect the Bengals.
Yeah!
Yeah. I went on the Bengals train. I didn't expect Joe to get out though. I mean, once he got out, I'm like, yeah, that's over for them.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah.
So Nick got it right with the Ravens, as did Zan.
That was pretty much a split. I mean, I think there was one more person at the Bengals. It was 4 people, 4-3. So I mean,
It was
almost
me, Ben, and Paul all had the Bengals.
split. Yep.
Going now to the NFC North.
Oh, God.
Everybody had the Vikings except for Ben and Zan.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Yeah.
The Lions
Zan
were
was
good.
the Lions.
I was big on the Lions last year. Even though they didn't make the playoffs, they went right at the end against the Packers, and I'm like, "Yep, that's my playoff team."
I thought it was going to be. I thought the Lions were going to get a wild card. I didn't think they were going to win the whole division.
I mean, I can respect that.
You smell that? I smell a Vikings bias.
I don't think a lot of people had the Lions to win the division, so I was going bold
I don't
there.
think anybody.
I
I
was
don't think
right.
anybody really expected the Vikings to have the collapse that they did.
Well, Kirk Cousins getting hurt. No one expected.
Right. Going to the AFC East.
Mhm.
I was right, and Ben was right, and Zan was right in the Bills.
Yep.
Oh, God.
Nick Morganson, how does it taste putting all of your hope in the Jets? So last season, you said you were done with the Jets, and then they got Aaron Rodgers, and then you picked them to win the division, and then he gets hurt in the first game of the season.
Oh,
I mean,
where
let's
is
be
it?
real. I'm like, so say if Aaron Rodgers stayed healthy the whole entire year, how many extra wins specifically, theoretically, do you think they would have gotten with that offense?
What was their record again? Because now I don't even remember.
Jets record this year
Was 7-10.
7.
Could they have gotten 3 more wins to get to your point?
They would have made the playoffs. They definitely would have made the playoffs. They would have snuck in. They wouldn't have gone very far. Let me be fair, even though I had them as a AFC title game contender. But
the problem was about that offense line for the Jets. They had so many injuries consistently.
yeah, but
So
Zach
it's
Wilson's
like-
a bust. How many times do I have to say this?
I mean, all right. I think we all know that.
Well, they're
but-
going to have to get a backup quarterback this offseason then. Now,
Well, the thing is, I was at the game when Aaron Rodgers went down.
I'm sorry for your loss.
So, but when it happened, I didn't think that he was going to be out for the whole year. It looked
I
like
don't
he
think
was
I-
going to be
I
out
think
for the whole
everybody did.
game, but he would be back. And then the next day, I found out, he's out for the year.
I mean, that was great. You had
And
fans
the
that
joy of winning that game went away the next day.
Well,
I
I think
I've never felt so happy after a win like that. I mean, I was borderline emotional.
that overtime
After the
game was
Jets won.
insane. Like I remember
That was
sitting in my
crazy.
brother's house and I'm yelling as I don't remember who it was, the guy who had 3 touchdowns that game, whoever it was. But I just remember screaming. I'm like, maybe we'll round up behind that victory and maybe win again. And then I realized, oh wait, I must be drunk or something. Zach Wilson is the quarterback of this team.
Yeah.
Then looking at the NFC East, well, we all expected the Eagles, and we looked to be right within the first half of the year, and then just an absolute collapse into
had to
insanity.
be the Cowboys.
Wait,
Right?
did someone
Oh,
say?
no.
Did someone say Cowboys?
How about them Cowboys?
Sorry. I had to say it.
Of course, I was going to do it anyway, but
I gave it a.
yeah.
All right.
Well, okay, so wild card. So most of us expected the Bills or Dolphins to be a wild card team, and funny enough, whoever lost that Week 18 Sunday Night Football game ended up as a wild card. So
I got it
nothing
right.
wrong there. A bunch of us also said, let's see, Jets, Ravens. See, even I had the Ravens as a wild card. Steelers, Nick, credit to you for predicting the Steelers were going to get in. So did Paul, though. Paul also predicted the Steelers were going to get in as a
Hmm.
wild card. A lot of us
Yeah.
predicted that the Bears were going to end up. A couple of us predicted that the Bears were going to end up as a wild card team, and Nick and I are eating crap on that one.
Yeah.
I had the Panthers, Cowboys, and Seahawks. Ugh.
A lot of us predicted the Seahawks were going to get. They had the Packers lost to the Bears in the final week of the season. Seahawks would have
Yeah.
gotten in. But they didn't.
Yeah, the Panthers just that was pretty much my most lopsided pick the whole entire production.
And then almost everybody predicted that the Cardinals were going to get the number 1 pick, and we were all wrong except for one person. One person predicted that the Carolina Panthers would give the Chicago Bears the number 1 pick, and take a guess who that was.
Gee, I wonder who that is.
You mean? Hold on a second. Let me go to the MMA Outsider banners because you mean Mr. Chicago himself?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, no one expected Chicago to be that bad, but
no, it wasn't even Chicago. It was Carolina. It was terrible.
well, because of the trade. But
yeah, I was just saying, Chicago's thanking Carolina for that trade.
Oh man! All right,
let's
who
see.
else was there?
All right, hold on. Let me get back to this band. Okay, there we go. Let's see. Most overrated team. I ate shit with the Ravens.
I went Pittsburgh.
Guess who got this one right?
Bengals. You and Zan were right.
And I was told I was nuts. Go back and watch it in the preseason preview.
Ben, I give partial credit because
I got somewhat of it. Yeah.
I mean, the Steelers made the playoffs, but they did end up getting embarrassed in the first round. So
it wasn't like they were great, but it wasn't like they were awful.
You know what it was? It was typical Mike Tomlin. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Let's do the preseason takes though. So I earned a little bit of victory here. So my coldest take was NFC South Division winner will be sub 500 again. Almost happened.
Wow.
Could have happened in week 18. Warm take, the Giants elect to keep Saquon Barkley even with a rough start. Nailed that one. 3 of the 4 AFC East teams will make the playoffs. Well, 2 of them did. And then the Jets. Yeah, so close yet so far. And then fiery hard take. I said the Chargers were going to miss the playoffs and fire Brandon Staley. And well, there it is. Nailed it. All right, Nick, let's look at yours. Broncos will be a top 5 overall pick in 2024. No, because they almost beat the Chiefs in the division.
For a while, it looked like Russell Wilson and Sean Payton were butting heads over kissing babies, but
well, they're still butting heads over something different. Buffalo Bills are overrated, must go further in the playoffs. I give you credit for that one. They didn't. Bengals are overrated and don't pay Joe Burrow. Part credit because they still pay Joe Burrow.
To be fair, the Bills at least lost to a much better team than they did last year.
Yeah.
It was the Chiefs. All right.
I give to last year. I'm thinking.
Who did they play last? Didn't they play the Chiefs?
Hold on.
Bengals. They lost to the Bengals in the playoffs.
Oh, they lost to the Bengals. That's right.
Right. Okay. They beat the Dolphins barely, and then lost to the Bengals.
Mm-hmm.
They lost to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, because it was that snowball game in Buffalo. Another snowball game like this year.
And then your fiery hot take: Aaron Rodgers must win 10 games and at least 1 playoff round. Unfortunately, he didn't even get out of the box.
Well, that's not saying much anymore. I mean, that's what I have to say about that.
All right, let's go to Ben. Ben, Russell Wilson is going to miss the playoffs again in Denver. Pretty much.
That's a great take.
Eagles don't have a Super Bowl hangover. Well, you were right for the first half of the season.
Oops.
It looked good.
Somehow the hangover went from the first half to the second half, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Bryce Young is going to lead the Panthers to the playoffs.
Oops. Damn it. Man, I wasn't wait a minute.
That is an ice cold take.
Yeah, really.
Someone got freezing cold takes on this one.
What the I hope you didn't put that in writing.
No, he did.
Because if you screenshot that'll last forever.
Yeah, I'm looking at it on the dock right now.
And then,
Hey, that's
you
what-
tried with your fiery hot take. You tried. Aaron Donald's going to be traded to the Eagles midseason.
What?
I mean, yeah, I thought he was going to get moved, but
You
I
tried.
was wrong.
And again, and of course, Zans. I guess we can go over Zans quickly.
Okay.
The Bengals will barely make the playoffs. Nope.
Well, yeah, no. The Steelers clinched the second AFC wildcard berth. I think it was the third.
It was the third. Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers leads the Vets to the divisional round. Again, didn't get out of the box. And then Bill Belichick will retire. And then his fiery hot take, Bill Belichick will retire in 2 years. And
He hasn't technically retired.
He hasn't technically retired, but he's without a team right now. And it looks like he won't be with a team in 24. So that's one to still watch for.
You know what that leaves him to do, right?
He's fat!
All right. Very quickly, early NFL futures.
Oh, yeah, I got that over here. So this was interesting. I started to tease this earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So who do we think is the number one at the top of the list odds to win the Super Bowl? Early 2024.
49ers.
Nick, who
What's
do you
that?
think's who do you think's at the top of the early Super Bowl odds for next year?
Oh, who I think is going to be the top of the odds?
I have the list of all the odds. I'm looking at the early 2025.
The Chiefs.
Okay, so the guys are right. It's the Niners. The Niners are plus 550. Then it's the Chiefs at plus 650. Then the Ravens plus 900. Buffalo plus 1,000. To round out the top five, the Lions plus 1,200.
That's a good bet. Take Buffalo plus 1,000.
It actually isn't a bad bet now that I'm thinking about it.
It's not a bad bet at all. I mean, I'm surprised why Vegas love the Niners so much.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
What else you got, Nick?
Let me see if there's anything else. Oh, well, we can look for our New York teams to see if anyone cares.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
The Jets are plus 2,500.
Not a
So,
bad bet either.
and the
I would take
Giants, plus 10,000.
I knew it had to be plus 10,000.
And who do we think's in the basement?
The Panthers.
Panthers.
When
Panthers.
were those odds? You could probably win $1 million.
It's
betting
it's
10.
plus 25,000.
Yeah.
But one team I would watch, Texans, which is another team we've been talking about, plus 2,200. So they're in the
Mhm.
same
What about-
realm. They're
what about
right
the
above the
Pack-
Jets.
What about the Packers?
Let's see. Oh, the Packers are plus 2,000. The Cowboys are plus 2,000. The Eagles are plus 2,000.
I think the
That-
Packers are making another step this year. I loved what Jordan Love did at the end of that year. This past
I got to
year.
give Jordan Love some credit. Like, he
Yeah.
played really good. He almost beat the Niners.
And
Mhm.
everybody thought he was
Yeah.
a bust.
Well, I'm not ready to crown him like good quarterback yet. He had a
No,
good
but,
year.
everybody thought he was completely done.
True. I'll give you that for sure. But do it again. Do it again and show me that he can actually play consistently.
And on that note, guys, I can't wait to do this again in this fall of 2024.
Wait a minute. The season's over?
That's it. That's Football Friday.
Well, I'll say this much. We are working in tooling to make some improvements on Football Friday for next year. Wolf Spreads will hopefully be with us to make some picks. We might be adding another person or two to this for next year. That's in the works as well. But yeah, I guess that puts a bow on the 2023-2024 NFL season.
Now we have 6 months until we finally have at least college football.
Holy crap.
Well,
wow.
we also have the XFL this year too.
Ugh.
No, the UFL. Remember,
The
XFL
UFL.
and US and
They're
USFL
combined.
they merged.
Honestly, I liked the XFL UFL thing, and then I watched it and I was like, "This is boring." Like,
You
I
mean the
didn't
combo? You mean
Like,
now
I
that they
didn't like it.
that you could thank The Rock for that?
Yeah, I mean, like, I thought I would like it because it's football, and I guess it's something. But I watched it and I was like, "This isn't good."
It's not good football. It's really not.
It really.
But
wasn't.
but yeah, so we'll be back. I don't know. We'll be back for the NFL draft. When's the NFL draft?
April
Late
25th
April.
or something like that.
So we'll have a draft show for you. That we usually do that every year. We'll see how many of us we can get. We usually do the first round though, the first round only. So,
We'll talk off
Good.
there.
but we'll figure that out when it gets closer. But yeah, that puts a bow on the season. So make sure you follow our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network for everything. We are getting closer to 700 subscribers, so please follow, like, and subscribe. Go to our website, etbpodcast.com, for all the latest information and blogs. We do have some blogs working on the NFL offseason, so make sure you go and check that out as well. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at ETB Network as well. Make sure you follow all those accounts to find out all the latest of what's going on with all our shows. Also, you can listen to this wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeart, Odyssey, and so forth, wherever you can listen. So, all right, Tom, you can finish now.
All right. So for Nick Morganson, Ben Cruz, Nick DiMartino, and the rest of the Football Friday crew, I'm Tom Albano. We thank you so much for tuning in this season. We'll see you for the NFL draft, and then we will see you this coming fall for the NFL's 2024 season. Take care, all.
Good night, everybody. We'll see you next season.